The highly anticipated summer series at Passion Community Church is here.
That's right, we're amping up for 5 weeks of intense competition.
And spiritual truth.
That too, as PCC campuses from all over the Commonwealth send the best of the best to compete in this year's games.
Needless to say, there's so much to be excited about during this summer series. Records poised to be broken, upsets on the horizon, and many more stories waiting to be told. So don't you dare leave PBN, Passion Broadcast Network, because this is the only place you can get up to the second coverage. We'll see you at church.
Well, the Olympics, they are upon us. For the next 2 weeks, hundreds of competitions featuring thousands of athletes are going to take place, and only a select few are going to be crowned Olympic champions. If our doubles badminton team is any indication, they are not going to be Olympic champions. However, our women's beach volleyball team, there's a girl on that team, she's like 6'4". It felt unfair to watch her play yesterday. It was crazy. I think they'll do well. Anyway, whoever gets a medal will be rewarded with some version of a gold, silver, or bronze one that, for the most part, is probably going to find a featured spot in their homes to be displayed forever, because it's a symbol of their achievement in hard work. It's a bit of a far cry from my trophy case. I think I got a couple of first place ribbons somewhere from field day when I was like in elementary school. Marble toe picking champion, baby, yeah. I got a few gold trophies from rec league soccer that definitely are not participation trophies, okay? A couple of plaques from band competitions. You know, the more I talk about it, I'm basically an Olympic athlete, okay? Except all my medals aren't on display for the public. Wouldn't want to brag. But they're displayed for the small spiders and bugs in my attic somewhere, probably. You know who does have an impressive display of their medals, though? The royal family. And check this out. This is just a small sample of the gifts the royal family has been given over the years. As you can imagine, though, these medals weren't earned through athletic achievement like Olympians would earn theirs. Instead, they are gifts given to them from all around the world because, well, they're royalty. Most of these gifts are made from the same material, the same metals we've been talking about in our That's So Metal series, like this golden lacquer box here. It was given to the late Queen Elizabeth in 1953, the year she was coronated. It's pretty sweet. Or this bronze and gold ship called the Vessel of Friendship. Now, this picture doesn't do it a whole lot of justice. This thing is pretty big. It's like this long at least, and probably this tall. It's huge. It was given in 2015 by the president of China to the Queen. Also, this silver bowl was given to the royal family in 1954 by the Sri Lankan Department of Agriculture. The list is super long, and some of the pieces that they have, they're really quite cool to see. In this tradition of giving valuable gifts to royals or dignitaries, the rich and the powerful, it's been a thing for basically all of human history. Ancient Rome, Greece, China, Egypt, all cultures and all people have given gifts to people in power, those set apart. And even God does this. Even God asks for gifts to be given to him, much like he does here in Exodus 25. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering from me, from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. These are the offerings or the gifts you are to receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen, goat hair, ram skins dyed red and another type of durable leather, acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and breastpiece." Now, don't get too caught up in the strange words and materials that we don't use or really recognize. The point is that God invited his people, the Israelites, to give out of the prompting of their heart. Again, giving gifts and offerings was normal in this day, just like it is in ours. It was normal to give important people gifts. And really, who is more important than God? So for most of them, it would have been a joy to give these things to him. But if you were to read that list again, the keen observer might have noticed that the gifts God asked for might have a little more to them than simply symbols of gratitude and goodwill. I mean, olive oil for the light, onyx stones and gems for the breastplate. Why is God describing how these gifts are going to be used? Is he running low on olive oil in heaven? Decides he needs some to borrow. He's got to borrow from us to keep the lights on. Is he making new armor for himself and wants to, bougie it up with some gems, some onyx stones? Of course not. It's because what he says next. Then, after they've given, have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Make this tabernacle and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. See, God asked for these gifts not so he can display them in heaven for the angels to admire. He asked for them so he can build a place to dwell among his people. These materials are not going to find their way to the attic after a few years. They're going to be used so that God can give a gift back to them, the gift of his presence. Now, before I go on, it's worth noting that the tabernacle, which is mentioned here, it's a physical place, but the tabernacle or any other physical building, like our church, like any church, any temple, it can't actually contain God, of course. Both the Israelites and we are incapable of really conceiving his omnipresence or his being everywhere all at the same time-ness. So he uses language or a structure that they would understand. He does that with us. He speaks our language. But the point is this is how God always operates, right? He always takes the gifts we give him, whether they're material in this case, or maybe a little less material, in our case, like our time and our attention, our money, our plans, everything else, and he gives a better gift in return, his presence with us, which has the power of life and life to the full. Again, that's not typically how we roll. Returning a gift we've been given with an even better one. My daughter's 6th birthday, it was just recently. She had been dying to get a Barbie car. And by the way, shout out Barbie for the comeback. I know they never went away, but Barbie fever is everywhere, so pretty impressive. Anyway, it would not be a stretch to say she was desperate for this car. If we ever saw one in the store, or we saw it on Amazon or something, or on an ad, because, we just talk about it and our phones are listening, so there it is, of course. Sometimes, I kid you not, we were in the store, and she saw it, and she basically, outstretched her arm like she was lost in the desert, and could see an oasis just on the horizon. I was like, I need it. She was stoked to get it, though. We got it for her. She was stoked to get it last week, and among the other things she's got, she's just been playing with her toys, nonstop since then. And the feeling of watching her enjoy these things, it feels good to Megan and I. And that's enough. We didn't get it for her with the expectation that she would turn around and use it for our benefit. Mom, Dad, thanks for the Barbie car. If it pleases you, I'd like to clean the bathroom or change the oil in your car. That would be dope, but it's not happening. And it's ridiculous to assume that it would. We did not get her the gift so she could give it back to us in some way. And that's fine. That's just how we do it. When people give me gifts, I feel humbled and honored that they would. And I thank them a lot. Hopefully I thank them well, but I don't feel the need to give it right back to them or go buy a better gift right away. They don't expect me to do that either. And I wouldn't in reverse. That's just how we do it. However, if anyone could expect that kind of behavior to get a gift in return for what they've done, God could. Consider it. In Exodus 25, which you just read a moment ago, God's people are at the base of Mount Sinai, which we heard about last week from Pastor Brian Hughes. Just before that, relatively speaking, they were slaves in Egypt. God, through the use of plagues and miracles, delivered them from captivity and gave them freedom. So if there was ever a time God deserved to be given gifts, it was right there at the base of the mountain. And God literally had no reason to give something in return for their gifts, considering what he had just done. And yet he still does. The rest of Exodus 25, we only read the beginning. The rest of Exodus 25, all the way through Exodus 31, they describe a place called the tabernacle, where God would dwell among his people, where his spirit would be. Using the gifts God asked for from his people, they construct a home for him, full of rich imagery and reminders of all he's done for them through the years. But again, most importantly, it's the fact that God would even dwell with them in the first place that sets our God apart. I mean, he's so bent on being with his people that he would go out of his way to make it possible for them to be together. Even though it's really only a one-way benefit street, right? When I'm with God, I benefit, which we'll talk about a little more. When God's with me, I mean, I just disappoint him, you know? There's so many things that I benefit from with being with God where he doesn't really benefit from me. But what's even better than all of this is that this in Exodus 25, it's not the first time God has tried to make his home among his people. If you go back all the way to the beginning of your Bible, Genesis 1 and 2, the first two books of the Bible, where the creation of everything is described, the point of the story is to show how God intended things to be. He wanted to live among us in harmony and partnership and manage what he had created together. So in Genesis 1 and 2, Adam and Eve were always in God's good presence, content in everything, until they weren't. In the Garden of Eden, or the garden tabernacle, if you will, they decided that the partnership just wasn't good enough. They wanted to be the ones in charge. They wanted to hoard all the treasure of the creation that God had just made for themselves. And by doing that, they sinned. And God vacated, and he removed them from the garden. So when we get to Exodus 25, we're really just reading repeated history. God, again, is trying to make a way to be with his people in partnership with them on earth, again, only for them to botch this one too. Beginning with the golden calf, which we got to read about last week, followed by numerous decisions to keep the freedom and gifts God had given them for themselves to use it for their benefit. The tabernacle eventually fell because the partnership wasn't there. God vacated, and their nation ended up in ruin. Fast forward, you might know about the temple in Jerusalem, built by King Solomon, King David's son. It's the same story. God again wants to be with his people and tells Solomon exactly how to build the temple. He does it, they do it, God's spirit comes on the temple, and yet again they screw it up. They withhold the blessings they've been given. They'd rather display them in the trophy room rather than give them back to God. They're keeping them for themselves. So again, they sin, God, you know the rest. Over and over, God longs to be with his people, and over, they decide to reject that gift for shiny things like gold and silver and ego and pride and status and power. Which makes each subsequent time God tries to be with them even more baffling. Like, you just want to, I just want to look at God sometimes and be like, hey man, surely you're not too thick-headed to see this is not working. They are not interested in this, man. It's like, I don't know if y'all remember this. Back in high school, you would have this guy, fellas might relate to this, you would know this guy who would just text the same girl over and over and over again. Maybe you're from the letter writing age. They would write a letter over and over and over again. Just translate into your vernacular. What an insult, okay? It's just the truth. But I was still writing letters, texting some, the early days of texting. Anyway, but they would never get a response. Just perpetually get left on read. But over and over again, just keep texting. You just want to look at the dude and be like, brother, she does not want you, okay? Please save yourself the embarrassment and pain of rejection you might feel and move on. You keep going. Look, I get it, dog. You go to the gym, okay? But maybe get your grades up so you can have an actual intelligent conversation with her and go from there. Right? That's worth a shot. Anyway, who among us would keep trying and trying after being burned and rejected so many times? Who would do that? Nobody. At some point, we would give up. But that's one of the many reasons that we're not God. Praise the Lord for that. Because God does keep trying. In the next time he goes for it, everything would change. After the Magi had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped Jesus. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. See, Jesus was and is the ultimate act of God's desire to be with us. He is called Emmanuel, which literally means God with us. And through his life, his death, and resurrection, God made a permanent, eternal way for us to access his presence. No longer would it be about gardens or tabernacles or temples. Instead, Jesus paid the price for our sin, the repeated rejection of his partnership with us, so that we could become the home for God's Spirit or himself in us. It's not a building anymore. It's us. And I love the way this Bible translation from theologian N.T. Wright puts it. You might recognize these famous words of Paul's. Don't you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, the Spirit God gave you, so that you don't belong to yourselves? You were quite an expensive purchase, so glorify God with your bodies. You were quite an expensive purchase, bought by the blood of Christ, so that his presence could be with you forever. There's a long interconnected narrative here that I hope we all can see. God, since the literal beginning, has wanted nothing more than to be with his people, who he loves more than we could ever imagine, so that we could be in each other's presence. He's made every possible concession to make it happen, and those concessions weren't free for him. Jesus died for him. And again, it's mind-blowing to think about, because God does not technically benefit from being with me. He gains nothing. I benefit so much, which I'm going to keep talking about in a second. But what does God get from being with me? Why would God keep doing this over and over and over and over again, just to keep getting rejected? What is so special about me? What's so special about you? What's his love for us? His love for you, and his desire to partner with his creation, us, to redeem all of it. And because Jesus rose from the grave, there is nothing that can stand in the way of it except us, because we can still miss it. Like our ancestors before us, we can still choose to ignore or reject or hoard the gifts God has given us. We can still choose to be the sole rulers of our own lives. We can decide that we belong to ourselves, to use Paul's language from a moment ago. Just like they did back then, we have the option, we've been given the choice to hoard the blessings God has given us for selfish gain or excessive spending. We can squander the time God has provided by prioritizing everything but a relationship with him, which is the only thing that's going to last beyond this life, by the way. Surely you've thought about this way before, right? Think about this. We talked about Queen Elizabeth or the royal family stuff earlier. How long do you think those gifts of gold, silver, and bronze are going to last? Till they rust and fade? Like, really? Truly, how long until an archaeologist digs them up someday and they sit in some random history museum, essentially assuming that they're ever found? I'm sure the Romans and the Greeks never felt like that would happen to them, but here we are. How much time do you wager the Olympic gold medal that somebody wins this year is going to be featured on the mantle? When do you suspect it might make its way to a pawn shop for some cash and then be bought again by one of us as some cool coffee table piece? And it's not just their stuff, it's not just the material either. How much longer are you and I going to remember the plot to our favorite movies that we spent countless hours watching? When will the literal tens of thousands of hours that all of us are expected to look at our phones for our lifetimes, what will that be worth when we reach the end? What will be left of the plans that we're making now in 10 years? Hopefully something, but 100 years? 1,000 years? What will self-serving reputations be worth when they're reduced to a few lines in an obituary? And look, I'm just as guilty as prioritizing stuff like this as anyone else. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. I do this as well. I'm also not trying to say that if you ever use your time or money to do anything other than pray and meditate and read the Bible, that you're wasting it. But what I am saying is that just like the Israelites before us, we often put a dangerously low priority on the one thing that matters, the one thing that can actually save us, the one thing that will stay with us when this life is over, the presence of God. In every single gift we have, whether it's time, money, relationships, talents, skills, a career, health, family, whatever it is, it should be given back to God just like the materials he asked for in Exodus, just like the gifts the Magi gave Jesus at Christmas. Because guess what? God's promise to us is that he will give those gifts right back in all sorts of ways, but most especially through his presence with us. So what does this look like for you? What are the gifts that you've been given that you could give more of to God? The list of possibilities is long and varied for everybody here, but I think there are two main ones that we can all relate to. And I want to consider those areas of our lives where we could give more to God, starting with our time. We are so good at living lives that feel like they have no margin. And yet, time spent in front of our screens, it's higher than ever. That math just doesn't add up. As we live our early to middle adulthood especially, our lives become crammed with all sorts of stuff. Some of it good, some of it not so good. Either way, they're jammed up. Constantly on the run to the next meeting, the next project, the next vacation, although I do feel like I could use more of those, but the next game, the next whatever it is. But if we're honest, the vast majority of us don't have the next quiet moment with God factored into that equation. We haven't carved out a spot for the next Bible reading session. It's because we don't prioritize it. It's just the truth. We like to tell ourselves that we're too busy for that. But let's just be real. It's just not true. It's just not true. To use another texting analogy, it's like when you try and call somebody or text somebody and you don't hear back from them for days. They just never respond. But then you run into them in person. You're like, oh, hey, did you see my text? They say, yeah, but I've just been so busy I haven't been able to respond. Like, really? There isn't a 60-second window in your day to text me back? Really? We've all done it. I've done it. So it's not judgment. But the truth is this is how we treat our time with God. We're all busy. I get it. I'm busy. But it's not like God is demanding 8 hours of your day either. And we get a hint of this in the first passage we read from Exodus, which is worth looking at again. Tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from, quote, everyone whose heart prompts them to give. Notice that there's no mandate on how much everyone has to give. In fact, God takes it the step further and just leaves the door open for people not to participate if they don't want to. Again, God's chief desire is to be with you. So whatever time you give him is precious to him. And of course, it's true that the more time you spend with God, which is what God desires from you, the fuller his presence will feel and the fuller your life will become. There is no doubt about that. But if you truly feel like you have no time, if you're out there thinking right now, this dude doesn't know me, I literally have no time. Fine. Then try this. Set your alarm for 10 minutes earlier tomorrow. 10 minutes. And heck, use the first 5 minutes to just wake up. In the second 5, give the gift of your time to God. Prayer, Bible, silence, or listening for the voice of God. Whatever your heart prompts you to give. Make those 5 minutes part of your daily life. And I promise you, there's so many things I can't promise you from this platform, but this, I promise you, the more you do this, the more integrated it becomes into your daily rhythm. Your desire to give more of yourself will grow because you're going to feel God giving more of himself to you, and it's going to change you. It'll feel a bit strange at first, especially if it's completely new for you. You might feel like you can't focus or don't understand what you're reading. I mean, that's normal. But keep giving the time. Keep giving the 5 minutes. Power through that initial stage. This daily rhythm will change your life. I'd say the same thing about the second area, which is money. I know, church guy talking about money. Don't check out though, because I'm not here to beg for your money. Truth is we go out of our way at PCC to not talk about money very much, just so we don't give off the church just wants your money. And also, the Bible spends a lot of time talking about it for precisely the reason I am today. In fact, I'm not even really technically talking about giving money to the church, although I will talk about that. But what I'm actually getting at is yours and my relationship with God, because money tends to be like anything else, maybe even more so. A gift, a good gift given to us by God that we're tempted to hold for ourselves. And there's no doubt that it's a gift from God to be used so we can get the things we need and provide for those we love. Of course it is. But just like our time, God doesn't have some expectation that every dollar made or spent is going to be donated to the church. At a baseline, he asks for 10% of our income, which we call a tithe. And also just like our time, he just wants to be with us. He just wants to have trust with us. So any amount of trust that our hearts prompt us to give is precious to God. God does not need our green sheets of paper that we've assigned value to. He just doesn't. He wants our trust and partnership. And giving something to him like money that we depend on, that we feel like we have to rely on, it is a sign of trust. But even if 10% is unrealistic right now, start smaller than that. 5%, 3%, 1%. Again, I'm not trying to line the church's pockets with your money. I'm trying to help you see how you can draw closer to the God who wants to give you the fullest life possible. It requires trust. And just like with your time, I'm confident that if you were to take that step, if you were to start giving, your life would be changed for the better. And our church is so confident in that, in fact, that we have something you may or may not know about. We call it the 90-day tithing challenge. And it's simple. If you give to the church during a 90-day period that you set, and you feel like you've made a bad investment or that we misrepresented what might happen during that time, we'll give it all back, every cent, no questions asked. Because the point isn't your money. The point isn't a pitch. It's closeness and relationship with God. And the more that happens, the more we give of whatever we're still holding on to, the closer we will be to him, whose spirit lives in us, the temple that Jesus made a way for, in whose presence carries the power of life and life to the full. Like I said before, these aren't the only two areas. Any gift we've been given, plans, relationships with our spouse or kids, our jobs, abilities, talents, fill in the blank. God wants you to give all of them joyfully, out of the prompting of your heart. Not so he can hoard them, but so he can partner with you and give more of himself to you. So surrender these things to God. Make the commitment to give the gifts you've been given. Resist the temptation to hoard and collect and hog what it is you have. And instead, lay it at the feet of Jesus. Spend time with him. Trust him with your finances. Change your plans for Him. Use your talents for Him. Center your relationships around Him. All out of gratitude for who He is and what He's done. And let's start right now. Can we? I know, I've been on this platform a lot. I can't be at every campus all the time, of course, but this particular platform, I've stood on more times than I can count. And right when we get about to the end of this part right here, I know that there's a temptation to just start thinking about what you're doing right after this. There's a temptation to stand up and leave and go to whatever it is you're going to beat the traffic, whatever it is. And I don't take any offense to that. You do you. There's no judgment or anything like that. But can we just for 5 minutes forget all that? Don't leave. 5 minutes. Just these next few moments. Forget about where you're headed next or what tomorrow has. And give the gift of your time and attention to Him in this holy moment right now.
I'm caught up in your presence. I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. No, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm sorry when I came with my agenda. I'm sorry if I forgot that you're enough. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. And I'm not here for blessings, 'cause Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I just want you. Nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. nothing else will do. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. No, I'm not here for blessing. 'Cause Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I want Jesus and nothing else. May those words be true, not just for you in this moment, but for the rest of the day, for the rest of your week, and for the rest of your life. If the desire of our heart is that we just want Jesus, then we'll give him the things that matter the most to us, like our time, our money, whatever it is for you. Because we want him, and we can recognize that Jesus is worthy of every gift that we could ever give him, and so much more. So keep wanting Jesus all week, and we'll see you back here next Sunday to learn more about him. We'll see you then.